This edition of Mac Voices is supported by Screencasts Online, your source for new Mac and iOS tutorials every week. To learn more and for a 14-day free trial, visit screencastsonline.com. And by MacVoices Magazine, our free Flipboard magazine that brings you some of the best Mac, iPhone, and iPad productivity tips on the web. High in signal, low in noise, just like MacVoices, MacVoices Magazine includes information on how you can get more out of your Apple technology. Subscribe at macvoices.com/magazine or search for MacVoices Magazine on Flipboard. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, today I get to welcome somebody new to Mac Voices, a first-time guest about a product, though, that I've used for 2 years. Why have I not had them on before? I have no idea. It's my fault. It's not theirs because they make a great product, and I'm anxious for you to hear about Burner. So I have the tech lead for Burner, Chris O'Malley, here to tell us what Burner is, as well as some of their some new services that I'm not deadly familiar with, but I'm anxious to find out about. Chris, welcome to Mac Voices. It's great to have you.
Thanks, Chuck. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm really pleased. I'm always pleased when I can welcome someone whose product I'm already familiar with and can heartily endorse as it really works. And that's the way I feel about Burner. So let's ask you to give an introduction to Burner for everyone that's not familiar with it.
Okay, great. Yeah, so Burner has been an iOS app now going on, almost 4 years. And it's been through various design iterations, but the primary use case for Burner is essentially managing your private and maybe business or dating life with multiple phone numbers. And we have a variety of use cases, as I just mentioned, from dating to running a business and anything in between. And we basically offer different methods for doing this. There's an a la carte sort of model. There's a subscription sort of model for managing the multiple numbers, and that's essentially what the app is for. And you can have numbers that are specific to your where you live and in your area code, or you can have an area code that's from another another locale. And it basically just allows you to keep your private life and your public life separate, and you don't have to worry about giving out a number and whether or not somebody who would get a hold of it and start spamming you or start contacting you. You can always have the option of burning that number and moving on to another one.
And the thing that makes it different with your app, as opposed to some of the other virtual phone services, is that number one, you can burn it, as you say, mm-hmm. But almost more importantly, I can buy it for just a limited amount of time. So if I only need a phone number for 3 weeks when I'm selling my car, to post somewhere, I've got it, and then it just disappears, and nobody ever knows. Exactly,
and that's really, Chuck, that's what kind of got me hooked on it as well. I'm not an avid seller of things on Craigslist, but like most people, I have junk lying around the house and occasionally need to get rid of things. And having the number for that, I found that I had much more success posting a phone number to Craigslist than using email. And the response time is much quicker, and particularly if you have MMS on your Burner. MMS is picture messaging. Sorry for the picture messaging. Oftentimes people will be sort of sending out multiple responses to Craigslist ads, and they don't remember which one they were talking to. And so, can you send me the photos again? Can you send me another photo, like a candid photo or something like that? And so Burner just works really well for that. It's very lightweight. You're out on your Saturday and people are pinging you about your Craigslist ad. It just works great for that.
Yeah, my use case was a little different. I was in Las Vegas on vacation and starting to make reservations for this restaurant and that show. Mm-hmm. And I realized I'm giving away my cell phone number because I'm obviously can't use my home number. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to go home and then start being bombarded with things. So I got a Burner number, and every call that came through to the Burner number came right to my cell phone, no problem. But then in 2 weeks it expired and I never heard from anybody again.
And what happened in Vegas stayed in Vegas.
Exactly. You work for the Tourism Bureau, right?
I do, exactly.
Yeah. I got to tell you up front, and then we'll get into the logistics of this. I was a little hesitant to try Burner for the very same reason. that I'm about to give you my cell phone number, and so I've got to have a certain amount of faith that you're not going to sell it.
Exactly.
My personal judgment was I'm going to take a chance on you guys because I know where to find you. I don't know where to find some of these other people after the fact. But what is your privacy policy, and how do you handle those concerns?
Yeah, we're pretty upfront. I'm not going to be able to quote the line in the privacy policy, but our goal with collecting a phone number is entirely about just ease of use and making it lightweight. And in the reality, there's two calling models essentially with Burner right now. There's the VoIP model, which everybody's familiar with from Skype and other similar services, and then there's the over-the-top model. And the over-the-top model is the original calling model. Let me get into that. So the over-the-top model is essentially you're calling with your real phone number, but to the person you're calling, and then similarly somebody calling you, it's your burner number. And so that's kind of why we need to collect the number in order to facilitate that particular model of calling. But getting back to the privacy policy again, I think we're pretty upfront there about we're not using the number for that. It's entirely utilitarian, and we're also aware that other apps out there are doing this sort of thing, and people are comfortable with it, and maybe those other apps are selling numbers or reusing them for other purposes. But we're not. Ours is very utilitarian, just to get people in the door in an easy manner. There's no email. It's just give us the number so we have a way of bridging these calls for you. If you're just using text, obviously that we don't need the number. And so we've discussed sort of other models around onboarding people, and you may start to see those things in the not too distant future, because it's feedback we often get, and we obviously listen to feedback and respond to it. But that was sort of the initial idea. It was the way to facilitate calls, and so now as things have progressed, and we find that some people just use the app for texting, just use it for calling, and sometimes for both. Having different options about how to log in makes a lot of sense.
And by now, having been in business for 4 years, I've been using you for about 2 years. If you were doing anything nefarious, we'd have all found out about it by now.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
So walk us through the process for the folks who are interested in this. Walk us through the process of signing up for a burner number. Okay,
great. And happy to do it. So as you mentioned, Chuck, we do, as part of the onboarding flow, you download the app, we initially kind of show you some use cases, some things you might want to use for your burner before we immediately say, give us your phone number. But we sort of walk you through there, inclusive of, and I guess we're going to talk about this in a minute, connections. But we kind of give you a brief overview of what connections could do for you. And then you enter your phone number, we send you a verified code. You enter in that verified code. And then right away, you're given the option to create a sample burner. And the sample burner is limited use. It's limited in texts and calling time. And it, basically is just a way to kind of, and limited in time. It's time boxed. And it's just a way for you to sort of try it out and see how it would work for you. There's a flow there to name your burner. You can change the color that appears in the app. There's a lot of color in the app. It's very, one way we use for sort of managing your different numbers is that. And then at the very end of that, we give you a quick look at what connections, or at least how connections looks on the details page of the app, and then kick you out to the inbox and say, have at it, make a call, send a text, and you could contact people in your address book. You could contact people, a restaurant from Yelp or any of these sorts of things. It's really about we try to, as part of the onboarding flow, give you some ideas, so by the time you have that number, you're able to go with it. One part I sort of missed there is, as you're choosing your sample, you give us an area code, and then we give you back a list of numbers available in that area code. So there is the option there to sort of choose from a list, like what number looks memorable to me, and then as part of that flow, there's also the option to memorize the number as well. And so you can basically go through this little game of typing in the number. I know for me, I have two numbers that I use regularly, and one of them I just had it memorized immediately. The other one took a little bit more time, but that's part of the flow as well. Like, we want people to to get something that they like, a number that they like that's memorable, that when they are in a bar or wherever they happen to be, they can just rattle off the number. Oh yeah, it's this. This is my burner number. They don't even have to think about it being a burner. It's just that's a phone number I know. So connections, we sort of bounced around the flow there, but connections is sort of the last step, and then off you go. Start using the number, and you have the option as the time starts to run out with the sample to kind of think about what the value is to you. Do you want to kind of go on this sort of a la carte model, like just pay as you go sort of thing? Or do you want to say, you know what, this burner is really useful to me. I just want to keep it, running. I'm going to set up a subscription and just have the number available to me whenever I need it. So as I mentioned earlier, we have different users who need it for different things. And so both of those models work.
I'm familiar with most of this, but I'm going to walk it through. So I've successfully signed up for my burner. I've got a number I like. And I give that number to somebody and they call me.
Right.
What happens?
So assuming you haven't turned on in-app calling, which is our sort of terminology for voice over IP calling, when they call you, you actually get a phone call on your real number. And the inbound call will actually be your burner number, which is maybe a little confusing to people, but that's sort of the default setting. Again, it goes back to the sort of the legacy of the app, how it's been around for a bit. And so that you get an inbound call from your burner. It's like, oh yeah, I recognize that burner. I memerized it as part of the flow. You answer it. And another part of sort of the how do I say this? The call flow is unique and it's specific around, I guess, privacy and not wanting to tie into your main line. Obviously, on your main line, you have a voicemail as well, and we don't want somebody calling your burner number to go to the same voicemail that you have on your main line. And so we have this flow where you actually have to, after you answer it, you have to acknowledge that you've answered it, and at that point, the call is connected and off you go. So a lot of people are confused by why do I have to answer and press something? Well, that's why actually. It's so that the call doesn't, if you don't happen to answer it, it doesn't go to your real voicemail, because on each of your burner numbers, you could have a separate voicemail. Like this is, Chris at, my home business, leave a message, versus this is Chris on my private line, leave a message. And so that's where that model works. Now, there's two options here you have. There's the in-app calling, which again, all that call flow is managed in the app. And if you get an inbound call, there's a push notification. You tap on that, it launches the app, and off you go. If you are not using VoIP for whatever reason, perhaps you don't have good internet connection or some other issue there, you'd stick with the sort of legacy calling system. And you actually have the option of choosing whether, when the inbound call comes in, if it's your burner number or if it is your the person calling you. And so different people need, have different needs there. Some of them want it to be the burner number just for whatever reason. They don't necessarily want to see the caller ID, or maybe they share a phone with somebody and they don't necessarily want to know that other person to know who's calling, these kinds of things. And then obviously for people who do have it set up, they want to see who's calling them. So they'll turn on caller ID to be the inbound caller. So it's a little tweaky, obviously, just due to the nature. It's not a native calling experience, but actually we'll get to this later with iOS 10. But so we have a few things that we have to tweak there and get comfortable with. And, we try to help with that in terms of onboarding. When you go to make your first call, there is a explanation of what's about to happen. And so the hope there is that's sufficient for sort of priming people so that they understand that the calling is actually sort of happening with their real line. It's just that we're putting this sort of layer around it to make it the burner number.
I like the idea that you can create that little buffer there in between for the reasons you stated, or I can just kind of turn off the buffer and just the call comes through. So if someone calls my burner number, I answer it just like a normal phone call. I don't necessarily know which number they've called, and it really doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you bring up a great point. That's why some people want to see the burner number when it calls. They've got multiple ones. And again, if different numbers have different purposes, they know oh, this is going to be related, to this business or this person I'm dating. That's why they would want to do that.
Okay, got it. So that's incoming calls. Now, how about if I want to make a call out on my burner number so that my caller ID isn't going out to someone?
Again, yeah. So that just happens automatically, and the flow is similar. You use the dialer inside of the burner app, and you press call, and the call is actually placed from your real number. It's just when the call is connected to the user on the other end, the outbound call, the call that they receive is actually from your burner number, and so it's initiated from within the app. That would be a difference here. The inbound call is entirely your phone line. You do get a push notification in the inbound case. In the outbound case, that wouldn't necessarily make sense. But outbound call, you started in the app and it's sort of finished in the dialer of the iPhone, and then that person, their call is from your burner number.
Now, folks, if this sounds just a little convoluted, believe me, it's not. It's the classic thing of if you want the features, if you want those options, you're going to have to pick which options you want. So it is a very smooth experience, and I love it. Every time now I go on vacation, I set a burner number up so that I don't feel like I'm giving my number away all the time. And then I just move the burner app to the to my home screen, my first screen, and it's always right there for me. Mm-hmm. Chris, how about, we mentioned text. How about text and burner numbers? How do I send and how do I receive text?
Right. Again, okay. So this is a lot simpler. Texting is entirely in-app, and the flow, the messages view, I guess, is what we call it. It should be very comfortable, very familiar to users of iMessage or frankly any other chat app that's popular on the iOS. And I mentioned this earlier. We have a couple of different paths there. There is numbers that are only for sending text, and then there's ones that will send text and pictures. And so it really just to choose what you need for your particular use case. But yeah, texts and pictures, they're both sent from within the app. And anytime you receive an inbound text or picture, you'll get a push notification, and tapping on that push notification will take you directly to the app to respond. One feature in the app that's not as well known, but it is there. If you get a push notification for a text or picture while you're not in the app, you can actually swipe down on the push, and there's the option to set a reminder to reply to it later. And so reminders is sort of it's a little off the beaten path in the app, but when you're first onboarded again with as a new user, it's sort of indicated to you where to look to find it. And there are definitely users who use it, and the push notification is kind of a quick way to get to it, just as a way to remind you, hey, you should respond to this later.
So this is one of the few situations where when the app launches, I should accept push notifications from the app, or I'm not going to receive the notices.
Yeah, it sort of loses a lot of utility without the push, and I alluded to this earlier, but again with calling. The in-app calling, not in-app calling, you do get a push notification ahead of the call actually coming in. And so regardless of how you have the setting around where the inbound call is coming from, the push notification will tell you who is calling you. So I'm sort of making it even more confusing here, but trust me, having push notifications for calling and texting is extremely useful, particularly obviously with text messages. It allows you to respond quickly and get right back to whatever you were doing.
Yeah, and I freely admit that I think one of the first times I fired Burner up, I said no to that, and then realized that, okay, if this is going to work the way it should, I have to turn those on. And it's not exactly. And the good thing is, it's not like you guys spam me with a lot of stuff that I don't need. This is an app that really does require it to function the way that it gives you the best experience.
Yeah, it's very bare bones in terms of notifications, and that's on purpose. It's all about your texts and your calls, and then if you happen to have a time box burner, you do get push notifications about warnings for various periods ahead of time. And then lastly, the left menu if you happen to have gone through that flow, and I mean, I know I've done it with apps, I get prompted to turn on push notifications, and I absolutely hit no. But in our app, it's really easy to find. You would go on that left menu, and it'll say your push notifications are off. Tap here to enable them, and then we take you directly to the position and settings to change that. So, and we're absolutely aware of that. We've had that feedback from users, and so that's sort of our quick solution there.
So at this point, I want to ask you about pricing, because we still have some other features and aspects of Burner to talk about. But for the folks that are going to use it like I first started out using it, what kind of pricing do we have for what time periods?
Yeah, so again, the sample I mentioned earlier is time boxed. It's not very long, and there's not a lot of text in minutes, so it's just a way to kind of get familiar with it. And then I mentioned the two kind of paths. There's the subscription path and then the a la carte path. And so what we have in the a la carte model are various packs of credits that you can purchase, again, depending on how long you want to keep the number. So you purchase credits, and they range in amount from 3 to 25, and you buy those, and you can use the credits towards extending a burner. And depending on how you want to extend it, you can extend it for just for minutes and text, so not extend the actual time length for it, or you can actually extend text and minutes plus the time that the burner is actually available for. So again, the credits model is the one approach. The other approach is the subscription one. So this is an auto-renewing subscription as provided by Apple, and it's a $4.99 subscription, and it auto-renews monthly, and it allows you to have a single line that is unlimited text, unlimited calling, and supports picture texting as well. And every single month it auto-renews, and you don't need to worry about it expiring. The other thing about the subscription, which is really nice, is you have the option to still burn a number and get a new one. And you could do this up to twice a month. And it's just a way to sort of keep the option of having a line open always. And even if you don't want to keep the same number, you can always swap it out. But that way you don't have to worry about it, disappearing at some point because you didn't remember to extend it or that sort of thing.
I didn't think about that. The possibility of keeping a subscription, but wanting to burn the numbers and keep them rotating.
Yeah.
I would have thought just the opposite. Okay, I'm doing the subscription to make sure that number stays mine.
Yeah.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, it ends up, I sort of said at the onset that there's two paths there. There's actually really three if you think about it. There is that second one is really I'm a subscriber, but I'm cycling through numbers. And we give you out of the box the ability to recycle, like I said, twice a month. But if you wanted to do it more, you actually can do that. It just requires additional credits. And so that's, you could potentially always have a line there. And if you needed to cycle through a number in a month more times for whatever reason, you could totally do that.
Okay, so those are the basics of Burner, or I think of them as the basics.
Mm-hmm.
And again, before we get too far ahead, you alluded to something there that's coming up in iOS 10. Is iOS 10 going to change the functionality of Burner?
Indeed. Yeah, that's great. Okay. I'm glad you brought that up, Chuck. So one of the most exciting parts about iOS 10 for us, maybe not as exciting for our users, but maybe I think it is actually, is so we've basically had this $4.99 one line subscription model almost a year now. And we've had a lot of feedback on it, and we've had a lot of uptake on it, and it's great. But we have some users who want to have more than one line with their subscription. Some users who are like the auto-renewing model, but in some instances are interested in longer durations of renewal. And so the new stuff that's coming out with iOS 10, and it's not exactly coupled to iOS 10, just to be clear. It's just, it was announced at WWDC. There's actually a great talk about it for those developers who watch the show, that it's worth watching. They go into great detail. So what basically happens here is you're given the affordance of different tiers of subscriptions. And so what you can do there is, in our case, it's totally around how many lines do you need. How long do you need it for? Is it a weekly? Is it a monthly? Is it a yearly? And so in iOS 10, and it's unclear if it's going to be available in earlier OSs, but absolutely in iOS 10, you'll have the option to, via a management screen, the same sort of subscription management screen that you get to via the settings page or settings app. You can upgrade, downgrade, or cross-grade is the term that they use there if you want to change your duration. And so we're absolutely we're looking at this, and I think you'll start to see some of these sorts of things roll out very soon after iOS 10 is fully live. A note on timing there, unlike iOS 10, and this is why to sort of decouple the things, iOS 10's in beta right now. You can download it, put it on your main phone, and check it out. The stuff around subscriptions is more around iTunes Connect, which is the back-end tools that they use to manage in-app purchases, and they don't really have a way to sort of see this stuff ahead of time, and so that's why I think it's coming out around the time of iOS 10. And at that point, I think in our case, we'll start to dig in and figure out the technical aspects that we haven't already figured out, and then shortly after, these will start to roll out.
So nothing but good stuff coming.
Yeah, basically.
All right, so let's talk about burner connections, because this is something new, and it's when I found out about it, I wasn't exactly surprised because I know you guys are always innovating, but I wouldn't have thought of some of the use cases that you've come up with. So, What is burner connections? So,
burner connections is at this point is a suite of third party how do we characterize it? I guess of third party apps that are sort of like first generation of extending the open phone number concept. And so right now, if you go into the app, again, the detailed screen for your burner number, you'll see Dropbox, EverNote, Slack, SoundCloud. And then, these are apps that a lot of people use and are familiar with. And so these were ones that were kind of like for us to showcase. Oh, I left out Google, by the way. That's a more recent one. Again, it's all around use cases. Like, I need my burner number to work with my Slack channel. And so we actually use this at the office. We do text-based support for users, and it all comes into a Slack channel, SMS support. And it's just a quick and easy way to reply to people. It's a way that our distributed support team can respond and everybody sort of see the conversation and see what's happening there. It has a lot of utility there. Again, Google and Dropbox are another use case around particularly users with picture texting, archiving pictures. It also archives voicemails. And in the case of Google, it also will back up your contacts in an Excel spreadsheet. So if you did happen to decide to burn a number and you had used it a lot for business or some other use case, your contacts are all backed up in a Google sheet, and you can take that with you wherever you need. We've had some use cases there of I guess artists, musicians doing outreach to their fans, and they'll set up a burner number, and they'll essentially use the spreadsheet to kind of collect numbers for people that they would want to reach out to the next time they were going to come into town and say, hey, we're doing a show, here's the information. And so that's a use case there. One of the really cool things that I saw with the SoundCloud one, SoundCloud is specifically it's a music service. It's kind of switched to a subscription model, but it was obviously popular with DJs and artists to publish music, and it's a great place for discovering new music. But we were using it for archiving voicemails. And so one of the cool things that I saw with connections is I believe one of our users' mother had turned 80, and she was having her 80th birthday party. So he posted his number up on Twitter and said, I want everybody to call and wish her a happy birthday. So there was a ton of these SoundCloud posts with happy birthday, and he could just sort of take her there and show her that everybody's wishing you a happy birthday there. And there's been a couple other examples of that with SoundCloud that have been really cool, again, around, in some instances, around artist relations by bands. So again, getting back to it, like as an overview, it's all about making the phone number smarter and sort of opening it up and making it kind of more utilitarian, and the connections that we have right now are absolutely all around use cases, things you'd want to do with the number anyway. It's just, sort of making it more comfortable, more familiar by bringing in other services that you're familiar with.
It's kind of amazing what can be done with a phone number if you break out of the mold of thinking about it as a phone number, because it's become a way now to receive messages, text messages, multimedia messages, all those things to interact as identifiers. I love the idea of the bands using it to connect with fans.
Yeah.
There's just so many uses, and now it's not like you have to pay a ridiculous amount to get that line, to have it dropped in your home or even put on your cell phone. Now we have Burner.
Exactly. Yeah, and so one last one that we didn't touch on, but we might have. I think we were going to get to is GhostBot.
Definitely.
And so GhostBot is the most recent one, and again, it's all around a use case, and we've already talked about it. It's dating, and so GhostBot actually came out of a hack day that we had here at the office, and we do these from time to time. Just to kind of take a break from the general cadence of building out new features or developing new ideas. And so we take a break, we do a hack day. And so GhostBot was actually developed initially just a sort of a pitch for hack day. And then we, productized it. So the idea is conceptually around adding a bot to a phone number and allowing that bot to sort of work on your behalf to communicate to inbound texters. And so GhostBot in this case is specifically for dating, and you would turn it on a particular inbound caller, inbound texter, and it would sort of handle interaction in a way that would basically sort of taper off communication with that person. The concept of ghosting is around people who are dating and they've sort of decided that they don't want to, be dating with this person anymore. And so they would, turn on the GhostBot, and GhostBot would sort of auto respond in a variable time to, let that person know that I don't have time to hang out right now. I'm not available at this point. And, that's conceptually how it works. It's managed at the moment externally to the app. A lot of the first-party connections are managed as control panels inside of the app, but GhostBot is managed on the web. And it was just sort of a decision we had around, trying to get people to check it out on the web and then come to the app from there. There's been, a varying amount of feedback there. Some people think it's really great. Some people think it's awful. Like it's, not something that should exist. Like why can't you just be a real person and be honest and we're not in the business of judging, like why would somebody want to use this? But we had actually, partnered with different groups who had, I guess, people who had been dealing with harassment via text. And it's a real problem. And that's part of where this idea came from. It wasn't just something we conjured up because we thought it would be funny. We actually have users who use Burner, and their primary use case is to avoid harassment. And that's where the burning comes in. And GhostBot in this case, obviously you could just burn the number. But in some instances, like having this sort of tool is basically a way to kind of diffuse the interaction and sort of get that person to back off, rather than if that person happens to be one who might be, prone to harassment, that they, would maybe have a negative response to being, blocked or the number being burned right away. And so, GhostBot is not doesn't solve the problem 100%. It's just sort of a way of, it's another tool in the toolbox essentially. And so, that's what it is. And it basically for us is, again, a specific use case, but in concept, it's around other potential tools that are agents that act on your behalf on your number to handle certain things. And so I think you'll start to see, more of these things from us.
Interesting idea, and it leads me to another question, I guess, about Burner itself. If I have a Burner number and I start getting spam calls on that, or maybe it's someone that I don't want to talk to anymore, whether it's a dating situation, a sales situation, or any other thing.
Yeah.
Do I have the option to block that the way I do with a normal phone?
You absolutely do, and so the thing around burning is kind of a critical mass sort of thing. And again, around, in your case, a very specific use case, like I'm going on vacation, this is going to be my burner for vacation, and then I'm done. I'll get another one the next time I go. You might even want to you're going on vacation in Vegas, as you said, you want to get a local Vegas phone number. So you get that, you use it from that. Any place you call, it's like, oh, it's somebody local. Maybe I'll give him a discount because he's local. That could happen. You do your reservations, you give out the number, it's done, burned, gone, and that's the end of it. For users who have a subscription line or just a long-running a la carte line that maybe is a particular phone number that's good to remember, it's a great number, they like it, then blocking is absolutely an option there. And that's very easy to manage, particular from the inbox. If you have a conversation you're tired of looking at, you swipe right to left, and that's pretty common in apps for deletion. You swipe right to left, and it's delete this conversation or delete and block, and off you go. And it's really, in some instances, maybe there's a critical mass of like this number has become dirty, and there's just too much spam on it, or too many car dealers dealing with it. Calling from different numbers. I mean, this happens. Like there'll just be a car dealership where different people are a dealer would call you from a different number each time, and so trying to stay on top of that could get annoying. And that's when it's like, you know what, I've had enough of this number. I'm going to burn it.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Does Burner maintain call logs that either you can access or that I can access as a Burner user? Or
what do you mean by
well, I guess if I told you the dates of my last vacation, can you go back in your system and see who I called or who called me, or can I go back into your system and see who I called or who called me?
We don't. I think by our privacy policy, if a number is burned, then the call and texting log that's all gone essentially.
Okay. And that was the next thing I was going to ask. In every spy movie that you see, in every security movie, there's always, I'll buy a burner, and then you see them, drop it in a glass of water or something.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes there's this negative connotation. And in this case, this is just a use case. I think it's a very useful thing. What happens when you burn a number?
So again, the moment that it's burned, all the data locally and on our server, the metadata around the burner number, and then the message history, the call logs, all that is wiped. And it is very instantaneous. It's once it's gone from the phone, it's gone from the servers. And I think something to point out. I mean, we don't necessarily like. Say that it's the most secure line. We don't like other texting apps, other messaging apps that have end-to-end encryption. This isn't our wheelhouse. That's not our use case. Ours are more around. I mean, you could kind of get into like maybe folks using that are trying to hide something. I mean, everybody is has different kind of tiers of I guess security or privacy that they're looking to achieve. Maybe that's the way to put it. And so in our case, if you were say doing something nefarious, like particularly around calling, like in the case of calling on Burner, you're if you're not on in-app calling, you're making calls with your real number, even though it is from the caller's the other receiver's perspective. That's it's still with your real number. And so the point here is all around, like, it's not a way to sort of hide anything nefarious or illegal, because there's going to be, potentially a way that'll be tracked back to you. But if you're looking, again, to just have that, like a very, simple kind of layer around, the potential for telemarketers, like, again, anything you can imagine around that, it's sort of spammy and not necessarily illegal. That's where we fit in. That's our use case.
Yeah, actually, when I was on the way to sit down to do this interview, I got one of those calls. And, I won a free vacation to Florida. And it's like, how did you get this number? And that's why you want to be careful, folks, about who you give your cell phone numbers to. And, maybe Burner's right for you, depending on what your situation is. But I know it has a permanent place on my phone, and definitely when I go on certain kinds of trips that are not business trips, I don't want to be giving my cell phone out to every hotel and every restaurant and all that. It just and ticket booking agencies, they may be the worst.
Yep.
So, Chris, we've covered a lot of ground here. Where should we send folks? Obviously, Burner is in the iOS App Store, but where do we send them to learn more?
Learn more is absolutely burnerapp.com. I believe you can check out GoSpot at ghostbot.burnerapp.com, but there is ways to get to GoSpot from Burner App. From burnerapp.com, if you wanted to check out specific connections like burnerapp.com/Slack/Dropbox/Google, there's more information about all those there. Again, go and download the app is the best thing. It's available on iOS and Android, and you can try it out on both and get the free sample and see how it works. And I think again, you've mentioned use cases. I've mentioned some. There's plenty more that other people have come up with, and I think it has a lot of utility. I'd love to hear more people using it in interesting ways, and definitely keep an eye out for more ideas, more features and tools around the open phone number concept.
Yeah, it's limited only by your imagination and your particular use cases. So, Chris, I really appreciate all the time you took to explain all the nuances of this. And I just want to add once more my endorsement that it's a great app that I use and love. So please keep up the good work.
Awesome. Thanks, Chuck.
We'll talk to you again soon.
Great. Sounds good.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. Please check out Burner App if you have the need for any of this, or even if you don't. If you're one of those people that blocks phone calls, well, it means you've given your number to somebody at the wrong place at the wrong time. Maybe if you had Burner, you wouldn't have done it. Until the next time, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes, links to subscribe, and to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, SoundCloud, the MacVoices blog, the MacVoices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter, and on MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard that helps you do more with your Apple tech. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.